So the article I chose to talk about for the current event assignment is called U.S. Debt Ceiling Fight Riles Texans at Both Political Ends. And it was published on May 26, 2023 by the Texas Tribune by Matthew Choi. And this article, the main thing that it talks about is the issue with raising the debt ceiling. And so the two major political parties in this instance are Democrats and Republicans, and so they're at odds with each other because the Democrats want to raise the debt ceiling, whereas the Republicans want it to remain the same. And I think the debt ceiling is currently at $31 trillion. And so Democrats want to raise it because they feel as though if they cut spending, it will affect those that need those governmental support programs the most. And so it becomes a problem because then they will continue to struggle more so without those and slip through the cracks and not be able to support themselves financially, because a lot of them rely on it. Whereas Republicans would like to keep the debt ceiling the same because for years and decades, the debt ceiling has continued to rise, and they've continued to establish a new cap over and over and over again, but they continue to push it back. And so they're concerned that if they keep pushing the debt ceiling back and back and back, that there's going to be further repercussions down the line. And so they've recently come up with this bill called the Limit, Save, Grow Act, which is proposed by the Republican Party in the sense that they will not cut spending on things that are important and significant to the United States, which are like defense and social security, but that would mean that they would cut from social services like healthcare and education, which I've learned from class that more entails with the role of state governments, and they typically tend to manage those things. So if federal government funding is cut off or lessened significantly in those areas, then that puts more pressure on state governments to find ways to support the programs that they've put in place. However, it probably would be more difficult, and then they would honestly have to probably start cutting their own programs as well, leaving the citizens of their state in a turmoil because they no longer have access to that funding to get the help and support that they need from the government. And with those social services also lies climate change initiatives, which Republicans have been against for quite some time. And so they feel as though the climate change initiatives are a waste and that money could be spent allocated to other things that need funding. So if the Republican bill gets passed, then it could potentially cut 33% of the domestic programs in the United States by 2024, which Democrats have voiced that it would lead to an economic recession and, again, drastic consequences for people that depend on those programs as their livelihood. However, the bill has passed the House of Representatives, but because the Senate is controlled, has a majority of Democrats, then that means that the likelihood that the bill is going to be approved is slim to none. For a bill to pass, and become a law, it has to pass the House of Representatives and the Senate, and to be also approved by the president to become a law. And so there have been letters from the Progressive Caucus to President Joe Biden trying to appeal to their side of the issue and fight for raising the debt ceiling. So far, the decision that they have to make they have less than a week to make this decision because the deadline is June 1st, as it is stated by the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, that they'll run out of options for finance and funding their federal programs by that set date. And so compromises are in the works, but there's nothing for certain or set in stone. There's not a concrete solution that has been made. Democrats also argue that the debt ceiling counters the 14th Amendment, which says that, the debt ceiling should not be questioned and raising it. This relates to what we've learned in class, especially considering the impact the federal government's decisions have on, state governments and local municipalities, in the sense that whatever they come to conclude here affects everyone. Cutting healthcare and education would lead to not only problems with the federal government and their funding and all those things, but if that were to happen, then that would matriculate down into the state government, that one of their primary roles is to deal with family affairs, healthcare, and education for their state. And so that would also lead to potential issues in the future that hopefully in this discussion are being considered. And the compromise needs to be made regarding the issue of the debt ceiling between both parties to come up with a good solution that will be beneficial to everyone in this country.